Hello, I'm Dr. Jacqui von Cziffra-Bergs, and I'm the director of the Solution Focused Institute of South Africa. I've started a little series where I'm interviewing prominent researchers and clinicians in solution-focused therapy. Today, I've got Dr. Adam Froerer on the line from Chicago. Adam is a researcher and presenter of solution-focused therapy. Adam, welcome.
Thanks, Jackie.
It's nice to have you here in South Africa. I believe it's quite hot up there today.
It is quite hot today and very humid.
Well, it's cold in Johannesburg.
I'm a little jealous.
So, Adam, I'd like to chat to you about solution-focused therapy and the work you do regarding research in solution-focused therapy. So, Adam, how did you start and how did you get to know about solution-focused therapy?
My introduction to solution-focused therapy began when I was a master's student at the University of Oregon. It was just kind of an instant connection for me. It was of all of the family therapy. I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And so of all of the therapy models and approaches, it's the one that kind of stood out to me. After my master's degree, I moved to Texas Tech University and was very fortunate there to be able to be matched up with Dr. Sarah Smock-Jordan, who is a really well-known researcher in solution-focused brief therapy. She was my faculty advisor for the 3 years that I was there, and we started doing a lot of research together on solution-focused brief therapy. And probably the most significant of that work was some of the microanalysis work with Dr. Janet Bablis and Peter DeYoung and Harry Corman. And so that's where I started really getting interested in the language of solution-focused therapy, really at minute level. And then from there, I was very fortunate to meet Elliot Connie right at the very end of my doctoral program. And we had a very quick connection. And that's when I really became interested in how solution-focused therapy is working and kind of where the language of solution-focused therapy meets the real clinical practice, and how do we do a better job of explaining what's happening in a solution-focused session.
Adam, you're very interested in language and how language creates reality and how a clinician's language can influence the client's reality. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think probably one of the earliest places that you can see that phrase "language creates reality" was in Steve DeShazer's book "Words Are Originally Magic."
That's right.
And he kind of phrased it that way, and it became one of the major tenets of solution-focused therapy. And I think that one of the things that's really, really important about language is solution-focused therapy also focuses on using the client's language. So the therapist should be very selective about what language the client uses and fix that language up. Literally will reuse the words that the client uses. And one of the things that I've become really interested in is how does the therapist use the client's language, and how do they do it in a really purposeful, meaningful way. And one of the things that I think really helps to understand how language creates reality is looking at the emphasis of solution-focused therapy. I think there's a kind of a trend moving to really focusing on developing a preferred future with the client, asking very detailed questions about what their desired future is, and when the problem isn't a problem anymore, or when it's less of a problem, what will that reality look like? And as the client begins to use very, very specific language about what would be different in their lives, who would notice, and what difference those changes would make, as they begin to rehearse that through language, it becomes something that they can begin to visualize in some way, really conceptualize themselves and place themselves in that preferred future. I've heard some people describe this as a rehearsal of their preferred future. And so it's connected, I think, as well to brain activity. As we know from some research in the brain, that the more we visualize something or the more we conceptualize something that we want to have happen, the more likely it is for it to happen, because we begin to see small signs of it. And it's almost that seeing is believing concept. And so the better we can do as therapists to really orient the client to using very specific language about their preferred future, the better they will be able to visualize it and imagine themselves there.
So Adam, if I understand correctly, you're saying that preferred future, our language in helping create that preferred future creates an experience for the client. And as we repeat and use their language of that preferred future, it becomes a rehearsal of the possibility that it becomes real.
Yes, I think, and not just in an imagined way, right? I think that there's also, so oftentimes you'll hear people or see people really act as if they are in that moment. Right. And one of the things that I have really started paying attention to, and I really want to look more into, is that people will actually, in their language, change from a future tense to a present tense. Yes. And they'll start talking as if that preferred future is occurring in that exact moment. Yes. And they'll start saying, well, I'm doing this, or I guess I think this, or instead of, I wish I would do this, or I guess it would look like that. So they'll switch, and you can almost see in their language that it does become a reality for them in that moment. They talk as if it's happening right then. The more you repeat that preferred future or explore it, the more they're answering it as if it's already happened and is currently happening. Yes. And you can also feel as a clinician that experience of being really connected. A lot of times therapists will talk about that therapeutic relationship. Yeah. I would say too that therapeutic relationship, it happens also at that language level, that as the client describes this preferred future in such detail, you can feel yourself also vividly there. Yes. And there's this intimate connection between the therapist and the client simply through language. And my experience as a clinician is, in that vivid experience, it's nearly as if I start changing my tense as well. Without noticing it or without doing it intentionally, I'm already also talking as if it is happening and it is in the now. Yes, yeah. And it's oftentimes hard. I think this is one of the difficulties of being a solution-focused therapist, to end. It's hard to want that experience to end because it is so focused on strengths and resources and resiliency that it's a pleasant place to be. And so it's sometimes hard to cut that off and let the client go on their way. Yeah. Adam, you and I spoke in February about how walking this pathway in language, the language pathway with the client, also possibly creates a neural pathway for the client. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for us? Yeah, there's the brain research is becoming so much more available and I think even user-friendly. But I think the essence, as far as it relates to this component of solution-focused free therapy, is a concept of neuroplasticity and the idea of the brain is always changing, and neural pathways are changing. New connections are being made as we experience new things, as we talk about something in a way that we've never talked about it before. And that different parts of the brain control or are responsible for different arenas. And so you have things like the parietal lobe of the brain that manages touch or the sensation of touch, the temporal lobe that controls sound, auditory sensations. You have the occipital lobe that controls vision and those kinds of things, the amygdala that really kind of regulates emotion. And so as again, if we go back to that preferred future, as we as clinicians ask our clients about their preferred future and say, what would you notice? What would you see? What would be different as far as vision? Or what would so-and-so say to you? And so what would you hear? What's the first thing you would eat that day? As we purposefully touch various parts of the brain, and that can even be around emotion. I know one of the critiques of solution-focused brief therapy oftentimes is that we ignore or overlook emotion. And I think that doesn't have to be the case. In fact, I would say we probably shouldn't. And so as we touch that amygdala portion of the brain, and we ask them about their feelings and emotions on that preferred future day, we're helping new connections, new ideas to be connected, new neural pathways to be developed, or rehearsing, going over a neural pathway that's already been developed. And so the more that we do that, the more pieces of the brain we can touch, or the more times we can go over a certain neural pathway. Okay? As the client leaves and they're no longer with us in the room, if any one of those pieces, a sound or a feeling or an emotion or a taste is experienced, that becomes a sign that the preferred future or pieces of the preferred future are already happening. And so the more details we can get and the more parts of the brain we can touch with our questioning, the more likely it is for that neural pathway to be elicited, to be lighted up. And as one piece is touched or remembered, then the great thing about neuroplasticity is that the rest of the brain or the rest of the pieces, the neural pathway, can also be activated. And again, it's as if the client is experiencing that preferred future again in that moment.
So, Adam, part of that rehearsal is expanding the detail of that preferred future. It lies in unpacking the detail on so many levels, so that it really becomes a rehearsal of what could be different.
Yes, Adam, the more details, the better.
Yeah, I think for me, it's learning that the crucial element lies in the detail. We have to, as clinicians, walk that pathway up and down, and create lots and lots of detailed descriptions. So, Adam, just to end off, give us some tips.
Sorry, I was just going to say one more thing. I think that, too, it's not something that we are used to. It's not something that we normally do in a regular conversation. So it does require effort. It does require work and practice to be able to ask that many very detailed questions like that.
So one of the tips lies in, if we had to give clinicians out there tips in how to learn the solution-focused language, it would be in unpacking the detail of that preferred future.
Yes, and I would say, yes, definitely unpacking. And I think the way to do that, people will say, well, how do you do that? And I would say, I've been very, very fortunate to be able to work with Elliot Connie, and he sends me videotapes of him doing therapy. And so I guess that the way that I would say to do it is to, if possible, record yourself either by video or audio, and listen to yourself, listen to your work, watch other people doing therapy.
Right.
Watch people who do it really well and learn how they do it. And probably the scariest is have other people watch you and give you feedback on what you're doing, and when you're asking those really detailed questions in a way that elicits a great future focus. The other thing that I would say is about that too is remember that the clinician, a solution-focused clinician, is guiding the conversation. Right. That sometimes clients don't come in and they don't expect expect to talk about what they would rather have or what they would want to be different. And so the clinician really needs to guide the conversation in that way.
Yeah, we are experts in guiding the conversation.
Yes, yes.
And we need to take control of the conversation and selectively choose what we expand upon and what we amplify.
Yeah, and that Steve DeShazer talked about that it's a co-construction of a conversation. And co-construction means I, as the clinician, have as much say in what happens as the client does. My say comes in the questions and the guiding them to certain things, whereas their say comes in the answers and knowing their own lives, knowing their own resources, and contributing to the conversation in that way.
And as we do that, we build a solution for the client.
Yes.
Create another experience, another possibility, and open up other neural pathways.
Yes.
Adam, I really want to thank you for spending some time with me, for taking on the traffic and spending some time sharing your incredible ideas and your knowledge, your insight, and all your research with me today. So Adam, thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been such a great experience.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks.
So if you'd like more information, you can join me on my Facebook page, Solution Focused Institute of South Africa, or you can join us on Twitter at SFI Future Focus. Thanks for joining us and hope to speak to you soon. Is Adam still there? Hello, Adam.